ye zhe dan zhe ye zheng zhan zhe par do dan ye zheng da ye zhe ye ye be zhen nam ye lo lang ben zhe sang ye sa shi be ye zhe ye me do zheng zhe zhe li zhe nin de yan ba de sang ye zhen do me de wa ye nam da zhe che ma de ye da ma ngo zhuo zhan nam da la ge me ya da da ya me Mazan Jimmy Shiram Badu Jim Maye Mega Namye Sozo Radi Yeji Jizum Gebe Yumla Chahaze Dea Tanga Denga de Baranga de Barasanga de Mode Yeso Dea Tanga Denga de Baranga de Barasanga de Mode Yeso Dea Tanga Denga de Baranga de Barasanga de Mode Yeso Dea Tanga Denga de Barasanga de Mode Yeso ye dong zha ye shu xi wang dang mi de ne be jian dang zhe dun ba zhe zhi jian bei zong zuo jue ne zhe xie de jiang dian de de shu So greetings to everybody. So please listen to the following teachings with the proper Mahayana motivation, which is to aspire enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. And the method of it is easy to, you might say, it could be easy to aspire for Buddhahood, but the actual method and the application of that method to become a Buddha, to become enlightened, that is difficult, of course. But still, we would want to know what that method would be. And that method is twofold. And usually there are, the solution, let's say, is twofold, and they are known by method and wisdom. The method are the mostly what would in the Western terminology one might call emotionally related, such as compassion, kindness, altruism, love, things like that. And that would be the method, tap. And on the other sort of solution to attain enlightenment is honing the skills of wisdom. So wisdom usually is here, and the heart usually, the method is here, and the wisdom is here. So, I mean, that's how we relate to in the modern world. Actually, in the Buddhist sort of philosophy, the mind, or the sim, or chitta in Sanskrit, which has a number of, which is a quite ambiguous word, can mean an aspiration, can mean different types of mental factors, as well as the central mind as well, so many other things. Anyway, so for lack of better words, let's use the word sim or chitta in Sanskrit. So sim is everywhere, not just in here, but on all parts of, on every part of, you might say every fiber of our body, there is sim, a different kind of sim, or mental factors. So sim here refers to mental factors. All different kinds of emotions are different types, are kinds of sim or chitta. So so development of wisdom and cultivation of compassion, the method and the wisdom, that is the key to seek liberation. That is the key to escape samsara. And of the two, the topic or the text that we will be reading belongs to the latter part, which is that of honing the skills of wisdom, which we do by So here we are referring to the ultimate wisdom or the primordial wisdom, which one can cultivate, which one can, the skills. The ultimate wisdom, the primordial wisdom can be honed by studying, first studying or reading about, and then contemplating upon, and finally meditating, or what we call establishing. So meditation also is a quite ambiguous word. The Tibetan Gom, or the Sanskrit Dhyan, might be a little bit different from this English meditation. The Tibetan word, for example, the Tibetan word Gom doesn't necessarily have to be, you don't necessarily have to be sitting quietly or sitting in a certain position, or lying down in a certain position. For example, when we are being patient, we say Soba Gom. Soba is patience, and Gom means loosely translated as meditation. So when we are being patient, in Tibetan we say Soba Gom. Literal translation would be meditate on patience. We are not necessarily meditating in the English sense. So Gom here can mean to bear. In Tibetan, to bear is to meditate. Also, Gom is the past tense of familiarization. So once you familiarize with something, a visual image or a sound or whatever, then you are doing Gom. For example, if you are listening to a certain, music, you are trying to, when you are trying to acclimatize with a certain atmosphere, you are doing Gom in Tibetan. I don't think the Western, the English word, the term meditation is that ambivalent. And anyway, in any case, so we have this three-step. Te sam Gom. Te is to hear. In ancient time, there is lack of books. Books are rare, so you need to hear from the teacher what you want to learn. So hearing, meaning to learn, to read. First you have to hear, Teba. Then you have to sam, which is to contemplate. And then Gom. So here, the reason I'm explaining what Gom means here is because Gom can, go into many different directions. So we are not talking necessarily about meditating alone. It can be loosely understood as establishing. So what you have contemplated, so you hear something, and from what you have heard, you pick out the ones that sort of sticks to your mind. Or in other words, that you feel this is, you gather as much information as you can. That is the first step, the Toba, the hearing part, the hearing stage. This is gathering as much information as you can. And the second stage is what we refer to as contemplation, is the filtering out stage. So you filter out, you filter what you want, what you do not want, what you like, what you do not like, what is true, what isn't true. So it depends on what goal you are. If you are seeking for the truth, then you filter out all the things that is not true. If you are seeking something desirable, if you are seeking nirvana, for example, then everything that adheres to that goal, you keep, and the other things you filter out. So depending on what goal what purpose, what your goal is, you filter out. So that is the second process. Usually in Tibetan, we refer to that as sam. Sam is to think, to ponder, to conceive, to contemplate. So this So when you're not just thinking in a vague sort of way, you're thinking with a rational thought, rational mind. So you apply rational logic and epistemological logics onto what is and what you want to keep and what you want to filter out. So that is the samba or the contemplation part stage. And then you have the gomba. So what you have filtered out, the things that you do not require, you keep them out. And the things that you do require for your goal, you keep them. And whatever you have kept, so whatever you have filtered out, whatever you have kept after the filtering. Now, for example, if this is a bean, a coffee bean, then whatever you have filtered out after filtering the coffee beans, after crushing and then filtering it out, then you have to boil the coffee, or make a cup of coffee for yourself by boiling water or boiling the coffee in water or whatever you like. So that part is the third stage, the gomba, the application stage. The stage of application, the stage of establishing, and so on and so forth. So these three stages are required. So in any practices that is espoused in the Buddha's teaching, in order to accomplish, in order to fulfill those practices, one needs to go through those three stages. First, you need to study about them. Then you need to make a decision as to what to keep and what not to keep. And after you have decided what you need to keep, you need to apply the things that you have kept. Oh yeah, so maybe I'm digressing a little bit. So after the the three stages, learning, contemplating, and applying. The goal, as we we dealt that on, I think on day one or something. So there is the ultimate goal and there is the temporary goal. So the ultimate goal, of course, is always to attain enlightenment. The temporary goal is to understand the meaning of whatever book you are studying, whatever practice you are doing, and so on and so forth. So in this sense, the ultimate, the sort of the temporary goal is to apply whatever you have contemplated after you have learned or read or heard. So there is a very important line from the Abhidhamma Kosha by Ajaya Vasubandhu, which says, so what you have heard and then contemplated, that very thing must be applied. So if you separate things to apply or things to meditate or things to practice on a separate basis, and things to learn about and things to study about on another basis, and then things you hear or learn on another basis. So in other words, you say, oh, okay, this part of Dharma is about academic study, no use for practice. Or this part of Dharma is for honing my intelligence or wisdom, skills. Now that part of Dharma, let's say Guru Yoga or Guru devotion, compassion, okay, this is for practice. Other things are not practice. If you separate the things to practice or apply, the things to contemplate or ponder, think about, analyze, and things that you must learn or read or study, if you separate those three stages, by separation, I mean, of course, there are three stages, but all those stages should be like a step, a ladder that leads to the next one. And so if they are in disarray, those three stages are in disarray, if they are not interconnected, then none of your practice, your goal will not be fulfilled. Whatever your dharma goal is, it will not be fulfilled. So therefore, we have been studying about the dependent origination as a basis for honing our wisdom skills. And dependent origin, in this particular book called Praise to the One Who Spoke Dependent Origination, or literally Praise to the Dependent Origination. So this is praise to Buddha Shakyamuni for imparting the sacred teachings of dependent origination to us, for not holding it back, for not keeping it secret as his personal practice, but for making this public to everyone, so that we too can learn this and apply this. We too can learn this, analyze and contemplate upon this, and then apply this in our everyday life, and then reach and then have a good life, a fulfilling life in the present scenario, and then be able to attain enlightenment in the forthcoming lives. So we are at verse number 30 of the Dependent Origination, the book called Dependent Origination by Lama Tsongkapa. The praise to the dependent origination, and this praise is dedicated to Buddha Shakyamuni. Oh yeah. So it says here. So we have talked about dependent origination for some time, up until verse number 29. So what it here says, Lama Tsongkapa is marveling in the way in which Buddha Shakyamuni spoke, discovered, and then spoke or shared the idea of dependent origination to us, which is the ultimate, which is the fourth most key to the doorway out of samsara. So for teaching us this, for sharing us this peerless teaching, Lama Tsongkapa says, because you shared such a profound discovery that you have made to us, it makes me believe all the other things. So this is a very, if you could share such a profound and and sacred discovery with us, then I have complete faith in all the other words that you have uttered. So the rationale here is that if someone, usually people lie when people have an ulterior motive. They say some small truths. They give you some small truths upon which you bite, and then they lie to you and they make a fool out of you. So since Buddha is selling us such a big truth, then all the small bits must be true. You know, there's no reason for him to make a small lie after this. So in other words, there's a very beautiful line. There's a line in the Acharya Dharmakirti's Brahmana Vartika, the commentary to Acharya Dignaga's compendium of logic, where he says in the second chapter, or in the second volume, in the second chapter, I think. So he said, "Di simbu changke ba nyelang ga yin go me lang da thochi ten ni thapche ra to nye ba yin zo yo ten mi lu chi shen la che su ba ba yin." So this is actually in complete line with Lama Tsongkapa's verse number 30 that we are going to read. So we will read the we will go over the line from a commentary to the compendium of logic by Acharya Dharmakirti first. So he said, "Di simbu change ma nyelanga nyekome." So Buddha is known as the omniscient one, right? He has the omniscient mind. So the Buddha is not called the omniscient one or the all-knowing one because he knows every bit, every single number of insects or germs that is living on the universe. Because he knows the exact number, count of all the living sentient beings up to the tiny micro bug, insect, because that is not of any benefit or doesn't serve us in any way. It doesn't help us in any way. Because he understands and thus taught us what to adopt and what to abort. In other words, the do's and the don'ts, what we should be doing and what we should not be doing, what we should be abstaining from and what we should be applying. He made that very clear. So because he understood that, that is why he is known as the all-knowing one, because he knows all the things that needs to be done and all the things that should not be done. That is why he is called the great all-knowing one. And he taught us that, not just knew that, but taught us the same. Because of that, he is the all-knowing one. We refer to him as the all-knowing one, not because he knows the exact number of all the germs living in the universe. So the last line, so the fifth and the sixth line, this is very much related to what we are going to do here. Because he is not deterring from the principal point, the main point. Therefore, we can deduct from that he does not deter from the smaller or the minor points as well. So we can infer from the fact that he did not deter from the principal point. So, similarly, Lama Tsongkapa also writes, through this very path of dependent origination, the rationale for your speech being peerless, convictions arise in me also that your other words are valid too. So valid is, I have no knowledge of the root meaning of the English word valid, where it comes from and what it meant and all that. In Tibetan, we use the word lua meba. Lua meba. So lua is to for valid, we use a negative word, melua. Lua is to fool someone, to cheat someone, to bring someone down. If you promise someone something, knowing that you cannot give them that, that is called lua. And so we put a negative prefix, mi, on the term lua, and then it becomes milua. So it means something that is uncheated, not cheated, not fooled. Something that does not bring you down. So this is the meaning of the word milua in Tibetan. Okay. Okay. Excuse me. The word used here is tsema. Sorry. So tsema, yeah, tsema and valid. I think that they sync very well. So it's not milua. I beg your pardon for that. So it's the word used was tsema, and tsema means valid. So they interchange perfectly. So kyuki ma dame bak thongye gyumze tenjung ki lamdi ni ki song thongye gyumze tenjung ki lamdi ni ki song shen tsema kyuba ni bak yes. So because I see that you are valid in this particular teaching, which is such a profound and sacred discovery, then it gives me the conviction that all your other words are valid too. And so this is the so the second line. So in order to prove or in order to ascertain what we have just read, that what Buddha spoke was peerless, or the fact that what the Buddha spoke was Buddha spoke about dependent origination was valid. So therefore we can infer from that the other words are also valid. So in that sense, to ascertain that, we have the following line. You who speak excellently by seeing as it is, for those who train in your footsteps, all degenerations will become remote. For the root of all faults will be undone. So the first line, okay, in English it would be the last three words, as it is, or maybe last four words, seeing as it is. So this ascertains, or this is the backup for verse number 30. The teaching of Buddha is valid because he spoke as he saw it. So you have to understand that in Tibetan, to see is to be. If in English you might say, okay, I saw something, I saw an illusion or things like that. But in Tibetan, you cannot see an illusion. You can have visions of an illusion, like a magic show, an illusion, a performance. But seeing means being. Like if there is something that you see, if you see something, then it has to be. Otherwise, you are not seeing it. You are just maybe glancing at it, or you are. So the Tibetan word used was tong. Tong means to see as it is, or to see there has to be something. And so, like the typical example we use is Kangring Ngombo, which is blue snow mountain. So snow mountains typically are, because it's made of it's covered with snow. It's white. The color of a snow mountain is, of course, white. But we say those. So in Tibet we have this sickness called peigen. It is to do with okay. So it is one of the root causes for all other types of sicknesses in the Tibetan, in the traditional Tibetan medical terms, medicine. we have this illness called pagan. And when those who have the illness, pagan illness, they see, just like people who have jaundice, who see, we say Tongkhor, seeing a white conch. Tongkhor means white conch. To see a white conch as yellow. Those who have jaundice, they will see a white conch as yellow. Those who have pagan, they will see a white snow mountain as blue. But in Tibetan, we say "karengwombo nawa," which means to have visions of a blue snow mountain. The person who has vision of a blue snow mountain does not see a blue snow mountain. So that is the term we use. So I have not much. I don't know exact meaning of the word seeing in English, like where it sort of goes back to see something. Does it have to be or not? In Tibetan, the word we used was tong, and to tong, it has to be. You cannot tong something that is not there. Okay, to see means to experience. I don't think so. Okay, somebody suggested that to see means to experience, or I don't know. There's a suggestion, the word experience. Okay, let me just take a quick look at that. Yeah, nawa is appearance, right? That's true. To experience, okay. Okay, anyway, so in Tibetan, to tong, which we translate as see, it has to be. So Buddha spoke as he saw it, or he tong, or sik, which is an honorific term. In order to sik, which is an honorific term of tong, or to see, it has to be. So Buddha spoke as it is. Buddha spoke as he saw it. So it is not just a mirage or some sort of like illusory vision, but it's something factual. So since he spoke what he saw, oh, okay. I think seeing something implies it is that. That is why you also say you are seeing things that are not there. Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I think that's true in the sort of like, anyway, so I'm not an expert on that. I will not go into that. For those who train in your footsteps, those who follow Buddha's footsteps, all degenerations. So degeneration can be understood as all forms of downfalls, any flaws, any mistakes will become remote because you are rooting out the source of all branches of flaws, which is the marikpa, the avidya, the unseeing, ignorance, being ignorant of the truth, being ignorant of the reality of all phenomena. And that unseeing can be undone only by seeing the reality of phenomena, which is that they, even though they appear as non-dependent, interdependent, but in fact, they are all interdependent. And when you see that, everything starts to fall apart. You might say, oh, everything's starting to fall apart. That's not a good thing. What about compassion? What about wisdom? You know, this and that. The thing is, we are not much used to these kind of things, right? Compassion, all these things, we are not too much attached to those things. We are not too much engrossed into those things. We are not engulfed by compassion. We're not. We like to play as we are. We're not. You know, we may be compassionate towards people whom we are close to, but in strict dharmic terms. That is not compassion. For compassion, for to be compassionate, for to be a compassion, it has to be unconditional. So, all forms of flaws will be undone because the misconception of reality that they are all independent will fall apart, crumble, and when that happens, there will no longer be grasping into the things that we like, no attachment. Grasping into the things we do not like, hatred, jealousy, resentment, and revulsion, so on and so forth. I can't stand it. Oh my God. You can't stand it because it is so true, existing so truly from there. It is so solidifying. It is so solid. It is so protruding. It's really in your face. That's why you can't stand it. But when you understand dependent origination, it is no longer protruding. It is not independently on the face. It is all dependently arising and is weak. It is hollow because it has no substance. When you understand that, when you go from the learning to the contemplation to the application stage, when you apply that in your day-to-day life, then you'll be able to tear apart all those solidifying, solid, substantial forms of substantial sources of triggers, triggering you to be attached, be jealous, be annoyed. So, to elaborate, the word we use was Jinpa. Elaborate. Elaborate is to embellish, to put on things that is not originally there, that does not belong there, but you adorn it with them. To make it more beautiful. A hat does not belong to a person, but we make a hat and put that on a person to make them look more beautiful. And it does to a certain culture. And a headdress of a certain culture doesn't really look that attractive to another culture because it doesn't belong there. That's all. It was embellished. It was elaborated by that particular culture. We have, I'm not trying to denigrate or this or that, but we have cultures who, in women, elongate their necks, which is a symbol of beauty in that particular culture. Is it beautiful? I don't know. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, as they say. Anyway, sorry for digressing. Next line. For those who turn away from your teaching, though they may struggle with hardship for a long time, faults increase evermore as if being called forth, for they make firm the wheel of self. So self here. The idea of self comes because we really, as we had that question last week, we really want to rely upon something. We really feel like there should be something.
there should be something out there. There should be something inside me. There should be something of substance. If there isn't anything of substance, if it could be, everything could be hollow, but it makes us feel so uncomfortable that we have to put something in it to make it feel unhollow. A house is not enough. We need to furnish it with different things. Yes, there are some necessities like bed and whatever, but then we need to furnish it with more and more and more things to make it home. A house is not a home, as we say, right? I mean, we have very beautiful things to put. We have so many adornments, embellishments, elaborations. A home is not a home. A house is not a home unless there are people living in it. People living in it. People being happy in it. You know, all this sort of elaboration we put. Anyway, so there has to be something. A house by itself is not a home. There has to be people. There has to be people who are happy or whatever. Then, you know, it has to be furnished and this and that. A car is not a car unless it can sort of like, it is mobile. So it has to do something. It has to be of some substance. This is how our human mind is formed or conformed, if you like. The same goes with person. Body. We have the body. We have the mind. Yes, because we can see, because we can think. We have eyesight, because we can see. We have ear sense, because we can hear. We have hand, that because it moves and we can see that, and all these things. Still, it is not enough. It is not sufficient for us. There should be a representation of who I am. There should be a self. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. So we try to look for it. We tirelessly look for something that isn't there until we start seeing something. And then we have a hazy view of something that is not there, but only because we are trying so hard to see it. We see something, we have a vision of something. Then we say, aha, I told you there is a self. If you really look for something, I mean, if you really desire something, then you can, I mean, see things that are not there. If you really desire something, if you really desire a momo, a hamburger, there's no hamburger in front of you. But if you really desire that, if you really think about a hamburger, then it will become more and more vivid. It will start to smell, it will start to heat up, it will start to, you know, so many other things. So if you really try hard to see something, then you can see it, or you can have visions of it, but it doesn't mean it is really there. The same goes for self. So the seeking of self very much relies, very much comes from the fact that we are materialistic. Simply put, something should be there, something material. Even though it's intangible, there should be something. But then, so self can be understood in the sense of self of a person, or self of a thing as itself, or that, you know, that itself or themselves, or in the person as in myself and yourself. Conventionally put, there is a self, of course. I myself, you know, I have been a follower of Buddha myself. You know, you can say that, conventionally put. But that self, that I have been a follower of Buddha myself, that very self, where is it? What is it? I am a follower of the Buddha. Yes. in relation to following the Buddha, you can designate a self. In relation to, okay, I'm speaking about my own experience or myself. There is a speaker. The self exists. The self exists in relation to the speaker. I am speaking. For you people who are listening, the self exists in relation to the listener. When it all comes down to the fact that the self doesn't really exist, but subsists in relation to the actions or attributes that it is related or connected with. That me or that self or that I am going, I am not going, I am thinking, I'm not thinking, I am a monk, I am Tibetan, I am a speaker. When you remove everything, all those attributes, all those actions, a self without all those attributes is no longer there. So it is subsisting, it is existing dependably. It is existing with dependence upon other factors, cause, conditions, actions, attributes, this and that, thoughts. So therefore, those who really cling into the self, from the last line, for they make from the view of self, for those the faults or the flaws or degenerations increase ever more. As long as you keep holding on to something, well, as long as you have the grasping, then all things will start to spiral down. Okay, so next line. When the wise comprehend the differences between these two, why would they not at that point revere you from the depth of their being? So those who understand, those who could comprehend the meaning of this profound teaching that you have taught, then of course, how can they not marvel and then revere and then lie themselves down at your feet? If you comprehend this profound teaching, then you will be bowled over and then you will revere, certainly. Let alone your numerous teachings, even in the meaning of a small part, those who find ascertainment in a cursory way, this brings supreme bliss to them as well. So, the attribute of Buddha's teaching is that whatever he taught, it leads to nirvana. So therefore, if you have a slight ascertainment in the cursory way or the right way, in the right direction of what the Buddha taught, if you have a slight ascertainment, not complete ascertainment, but as an ascertainment of I think Buddha is saying that, I think Buddha is saying there are Four Noble Truths. Vis-a-vis, I think Buddha is saying there are no Four Noble Truths. So ascertainment in a slightly cursory way, ascertainment in the proper way, in the way the Buddha taught. So having a slight ascertainment of what the Buddha taught will lead you into will bring you supreme bliss. It brings you supreme bliss because it leaves the imprint of nirvana upon your mental, mental continuum. Oh yeah. Alas, my mind was defeated by ignorance. Though I have sought refuge for a long time, in such an embodiment of excellence, I possess not a fraction of his qualities. So this is Lama Tsongkapa wooing. That on the surface level, it seems like Lama Tsongkapa is wooing, that he is not able to achieve anything. But on the deeper level, this is what we call humility, being humble. So when one is able to deprecate oneself poetically. So nowadays, in today's world, we say, being able to deprecate oneself, self-humor, self-deprecation is like. So in a similar way, people who could self-deprecate, they have good sense of humor, and people who have good sense of humor are usually fun to be with. So, Lama Tsongkapa. So Tibetan sense of humor is quite unique to the Western sense of humor. And so this could be understood as Lama Tsongkapa's way of being light. In one sense. So in one sense, he's being he's self-deprecating, and by self-deprecating, one becomes humble. So he's being very humble here, and there is also a great lesson here. We talk about this from the kind of, I think, in the very beginning. The meaning of teacher, Dumpa, and Dumpa means to exhibit, the exhibitor, and to exhibit something, you have to inhibit it first. So therefore, Lama Tsongkapa is exhibiting those qualities, meaning he already inhibited those, which also a message for us to inhibit them as well. So the next line. Nonetheless, before the stream of this life, before the end of this life, flowing towards death has come to cease, that I have found slight faith in you. He says slight faith instead of saying I have such a strong faith in you, he says slight faith. So this has to be understood as, people, there is those people in religious, I would use this word, I'm using this word intentionally, in religious factions, people say, okay, I'm more religious, I'm more faithful, I'm more devout, I do this and this and this practice, I never skip my 10th talk, and I do this and that, I have done 10,000, you know what I mean. So I think the English term is holier than thou or wiser than thou. So being materialistic in a spiritualistic world, in a spiritual practice, when you count the numbers and show them off, you're being materialistic. You are showing off your spiritual practices as your material gains. I have done this much number of mantras, this much number of mandalas, blah, blah, blah. So we like to show off. And we think this is, anyway. So within, we have those kind of tendencies. And Lama Tsongkapa is actually doing the exact opposite. I have slight faith. I don't even know whether I have, that much strong faith in Buddha or not. Of course he has. Why would he took the why would he take the labor of writing this profoundly book text if he doesn't have that? Because it's such a profound book. It has like only 58 stanzas, 58 verses, and then it's such a profound. It's usually easy to say about a lot of things, say about something profound with so many words, but to use words sparingly, poignantly, that is very difficult. You know, that's the task nowadays. You know, they usually say, okay, explain in 1 minute what Buddhism means to you. You know, people want it to be condensed, and it's difficult to condense it. Explain what Buddhism is in 1 minute. Then you have to, you know, say, oh, Buddha said this, so, you know, 4 noble truths that he said, or do no harm, do a lot of good things, subdue your mind, that is Buddhism. Or you can say whatever you like. So to condense is very difficult. To extend is not that difficult. You can actually, if you are a good writer, you can weave with your words. You can weave looms and looms of words to explain just one thing. You can, you know, reverse it, do it this way, that way. That's why we have anyway. Among teachers, the teacher of dependent origination, so teacher here is so again, the teacher would use for teacher is Jinpa, which means exhibitor, the one who exhibits. Among teachers, among exhibitors, among teachers / exhibitors, among teachers, the teacher of dependent origination, amongst wisdom, the knowledge of dependent origination, you who have most excellent, like you who are most excellent, like the kings in the world, know this perfectly well, not others. So others know this, you know, so many masters do know the secret or the how to explain dependent origination and have those experiences, but not as excellently as you yourself. So therefore you are like the king of the world. And because a king is something that reigns over a subject, a land, whatever, right? So the Buddha, as the best, excellent, most proficient teacher, exemplar, and exhibitor, was able to reign over the explanation, doctrination of the Dharma of dependent origination, was able to explain the truth of all phenomena, the secret of the universe, if you like. And because of that, he was able to reign over that realm. He is the king of the world. All that you have taught proceeds by way of dependent origination. That too is done for the sake of nirvana. You have no deeds that do not bring peace. So peace has to be understood as the ultimate peace, or pacification, pacifying of all the destructive emotions. When all the destructive emotions are pacified, then you have complete peace. And we call that Shivatartupa, ultimate peace. the edge of peace, tartupa, edge. So there's no more place to lean or go further. So as I said in as explanation to verse number 32, as I explained, anything that Buddha teaches leads towards, anything that the Buddha teaches leads us towards nirvana. It leaves whatever Buddha taught. If we learn it, if we comprehend it, contemplate and comprehend it, and then apply it, then the seed of nirvana will be automatically implanted within us, within our mind stream, mental stream. So therefore, it is completely pacifying. Therefore, we have the last line. You have no deeds that do not bring peace. Whatever you do brings peace. Alas, your teaching is such, in whosever ears it falls, they all attain peace. So who would not be honored to uphold your teaching? So this is an addition to the previous line. So whoever hears the Buddha's teaching and understands it, comprehends it, then they will, the seed of nirvana will be implanted, and therefore it will bring peace to them. So who does not want peace? It overcomes all opposing challenges. It's free from contradiction between earlier and latter parts. It grants fulfillment of being's two aims. For this system, my joy increases ever more. So it overcomes all opposing challenges, whatever challenges that were thrown at Buddha, as we went that in last week's teaching. All the challenges were thrown at Buddha by referring to the Buddha's teachings, what he spoke, which the opposing side did not understand, were not able to comprehend. So since all the challenges, all the verbal assaults, all the dialectical assaults that were thrown at Buddha came from this misconception, misunderstanding of Buddha's profound teaching, therefore they stand no chance against Buddha's teaching. They stand no chance in overcoming the Buddha's profound teaching. Also, the Buddha's teaching has no contradiction between what he said earlier and later. We have this kind of thing like, I wrote that when I was in my high school. I have that kind of, at that time I thought, this is how the world is. Now I have a more mature understanding of the world. Then there's some difference. There is, my view of world differs from this and that, but that is only because I have matured. If you count that stage when Buddha wasn't yet a Buddha, then of course there's a difference. But as a Buddha, there is not something that he said something earlier and then later, which has a contradiction. There are things that are seemingly contradictory, but that is only because he spoke that to different people. If someone wants to go to, the petrol pump, and another person wants to go to a restaurant, and the Buddha says, okay, go right and then go left to to different people respectively, those two people respectively, then you cannot say, oh, you said, go right and go left, therefore your words are contradicting. Buddha taught the one who wants to go to the petrol pump, go right, because the petrol pump is the right side. And the person who wants to go to the restaurant, he told them to go to the left side because the restaurant is at the left side. So seemingly contradiction. So what is the word in today's terms that is called taken out of concept, taken out of something. Anyway, so it grants fulfillments of the two aims. The two aim is that Rangde and Shinde, yes, taken out of context. Taken out of context. So when you take Buddha's, when you take it out of context, everything seems contradictory. So it grants fulfillment of the two aims. The two aim is self-aim and others' aim. We call that simply put. The self-aim is to become Buddha. The aim of the self, the aim of myself, the aim of yourself. The aim of self is to attain Buddhahood. The aim of the others, meaning it's actually from my, it has to be seen, both has to be seen, my aim and the two aims has to be both. The two aims has to, both of the two aims has to be seen from one person's directive, one individual's perspective. The two aims should be seen from one individual's perspective. I have a self-aim and I have an others' aim. My self-aim is to attain Buddhahood. My others' aim is to serve others after attaining enlightenment. So understanding the dependent origination, the ground of two aims, self-aim and others' aim, were both fulfilled. And this system, the Buddha's teaching, the Buddha's lineage, brings me joy, and it increases ever and evermore. So we conclude here for today. Thank you. Q&A, please. Okay, whoever is speaking has to unmute. Okay, please go on.
Yeah, at the beginning, talking about the 3 stages of learning and contemplating and applying, and then you spoke about separating them into categories, practice, apply. Could you just briefly speak a bit more about doing that? That seems very important.
Definitely. Okay, that is a very good question, because in the in the areas where there's a lot of religious frenzy, such as Tibet or India. So there are people who belong to, as I said before, factions. Different factions of religious tradition, religious organization, or a spiritual movement, and this and that. And so then they diversify different parts of, even when everyone believes, everyone respects the Buddha, and everyone says Buddha is wise and all that. But at the same time, they sort of make a separation of what the Buddha taught, and then they say, okay, this and that part of the Buddha's teaching is applicable. This and that part of the Buddha's teaching is not applicable, but is can be studied as a form of academic subject. And this and that part of the Buddha can be learned or heard as we learn about people's story. So make this kind of 3 separations. For example, so the example was that there's a saying that like the moral conducts of the monks, the dua, the vinaya, this has to be applied. This has to be practiced alone. Doesn't need to comprehend. No need to think about what no need to make an analyzation or anything. No need to hear about that. Just practice. But in order to practice, you need to know what to practice and what not to practice. And in order to know that, in order to be able to rationalize that, you need to learn what is applicable and what is not applicable. In order to apply something, you need to know what is applicable and what is not. Another thing is, so this is in terms of practice. Only practice, no need to study or no need to comprehend. Vinaya. There is a faction who says that. And that is actually during Nalanda's time, not in Tibet. It didn't come later. It actually come quite early in the Acharya Vasubandhu's time. I think that was in 6th century. I don't know the exact date. Vasubandhu, that's his name, Acharya Vasubandhu. He wrote the text called Abhidharma Kosha, the compendium of knowledge. So this is more or less like an encyclopedia of today's time. So another thing is Samarikpa, epistemology, logical logic, epistemology, and logical understanding. That is something. It is good as it belongs to the field of study part, but it does not belong as something to apply. There is nothing to the study of valid cognition and non-valid cognition, and the study of different mental factors and all these things. They do constitute as a interesting subject for study, academic study, and then also for applying or logical understanding. But when it comes to actual practice of the Dharma, epistemology is something that we do not need. So there's this was the epistemology part actually came very much in the in Tibet. Actually, in Tibet there was a huge faction who says, well, the study of epistemology, the study of the logic and all this, the field of logic and epistemology is part of the study group and not part of the application group. You do not have to apply any of those things. But the thing is, if you study them alone and if you do not apply, for example, the definition of what constitutes a valid cognition and what constitutes invalid cognition, if you study that as a field of study and then you never apply it, then when you are meditating and then a vision arises within you, how are you to know that it is illusory vision or it is a valid vision? You can determine that, distinguish that, only if you apply the methodology of logic or epistemology to determine that vision you are having is valid or not valid. Because when you are meditating, quite often you have these kind of illusory visions. The term in meditational term, it is called Dui Paje, hindrances by Mara, hindrances by demons. So whether to think of that as an inner demon or outer demon, that's open to interpretation. Anyway, so there are such things. So practice, not study. Study, not practice. So there are differing groups, and it's a huge group. It was a huge faction, in Tibet, especially with the epistemology part. And when it comes to the Vinaya, it was a huge. There was a huge faction during Buddha's time. After Buddha's passing away, those who say, okay, we only need to contemplate, meditate, just meditate, nothing study. And this is quite vibrant in today's Japan and some other traditions. So if you study, the more you study, the more thoughts will arise. Because ultimately you want to get rid of all thoughts. Because ultimately you want to reside in what is real. So the more you study, the more thoughts will arise, and you will be further away from the reality. Therefore, no study. And do not contemplate anything. If you start contemplating, then more thoughts, conceptual thoughts will arise. And the example is, the analogy given was white cloud, dark cloud, both block the sun. Good thoughts, bad thoughts, both hinder our perception of the reality. Therefore, nothing. Just sit and be still. Sit physically, still your mind. So, so these are, I'm not denigrating those traditions. I'm just saying, I'm just laying out those things. So there are things like that. Practice, no study. Study, no practice, like that. And in India, I mean, not just in Buddhism, in India also there was this huge fractions as well as factions. They go for the 4 yogas, the Kriya Yoga, the Bhakti Yoga. Devotion alone liberates. Knowledge alone liberates. And then, overcoming this and that dependence, overcoming or putting our physical body to hardship alone liberates. Different yogas, yogs, which means union. In order to be union with the one true self, you need to do service. Service alone liberates, which is karma yoga. Bhakti yoga, devotional. Anyway, so I'm sorry, I'm digressing. So this is not just in Buddhism, even in Hinduism or the Indic culture, the non-Buddhist culture, there is this separation and factions who say, okay, this alone liberates, this alone is the way. So and similarly in Buddhism, we have those kind of, and all of them are great practitioners and proponents of great religious tradition. And so when they say this kind of thing, it makes a huge impact. So that's why we have to lie down this, lie this down. Yeah.
And that's why you said that if you don't do this, you wouldn't get any attainment, because what you do
Yes.
is mixed up and
Right.
not know what to study and not know what to meditate on.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Okay.
For example, I will just conclude. For example, if you want to practice something, the application part. If you want to practice something, whether it's compassion or whatever, or Zen Buddhism or not Buddhism, whatever you want to do. In order to apply that, you need to know for certainty. I mean, at least up to you, you have to be certain this is the right thing. So here comes the comprehension or the contemplation, from which comes the comprehension. The second part, stages, is necessary. In order to comprehend, you need to contemplate. And in order to contemplate, you need to have the information, right? In order to filter out the information, you need to gather information first. You need to know what is in the menu, what is on the buffet. And then you can go up and pick the ones that you like. And then you bring that to the table and then you start eating. So if you go to the buffet and do not eat, that is not right. In order to eat, you need to pick out the things on the buffet. In order to pick out things on the buffet table, you need to first see what is available on the buffet table. To see what is available in the buffet table, that is the learning stage. And to pick out the ones that you like is the contemplation stage. And then finally bringing that to your table and eating them is the application stage. So you can see here in this simile of buffet table that one cannot do without the other, or one cannot do without the other in terms of, if you think it from the result to, if you think it backwards, from the end to the start. Or to think, if you go and look for the buffet and do not eat it, then the point of going to the buffet is, it's pointless. So from start to, if you think it from the start to the end, if you do not eat the buffet, then just go and check, and then you go back to your room, then it's pointless. So here you see the relation. First check, then pick, then eat. So these are the 3 stages.
But continue to learn, like if you learn and then put it, if a new item comes up on your learning, you put it in one of these categories, kind of thing. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I get your point. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Next question, please.
Rinpoche, can you hear me? You, in terms of study, you had actually 2 texts that you were going to present to us. within Praise the Dependent Origination, the first one. What was the second text? And I do understand that you are
What?
wrapping up the second text. Originally there were two texts that you were going to teach us. And, and just wondered if there was an English translation for that, because I know next session is our last session, and we are so hoping you come back to us very soon, possibly to teach that text. And depending on your schedule, a lot of us are returning to work in the fall, and so we hope we don't miss you. You know, we can work to make sure our little group here can continue in some capacity when you feel able and possible to do that for us. But is there an English translation for that text?
I don't remember saying I'm teaching something else.
No. When you
no,
first
you had-
started, it was the 37 deeds of the Bodhisattvas. Like
Okay.
Yeah.
I asked
Yeah.
what. Okay, yeah. It was a choice. It was a buffet table, and you picked this
Yeah.
one. So,
I'm glad the buffet table worked out the way it did.
yeah. Right. There's the other one was the 37 practices of Bodhisattva. Yes.
Okay. Is there an English translation for that?
Oh, there's a number of English translations. So you can find a number of English translation. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Rinpoche, it's John. How are you? Thank you.
Hi. Good. I'm good, John.
Could you talk a little bit about the difference between grasping and wanting?
Grasping and
wanting. I want this.
Oh,
I want that, or I choose this. I choose that.
Okay. Okay. Choosing is something. Wanting is another. In order to, you can choose the path of nirvana. You can choose the path of, not going for nirvana, or all those things. Choose to study, not to study. That is fine. In order to want something, you need to slightly grasp at something. If you do not believe something to be substantially true and out there, you would not be wanting that. In order to want something, so we always differentiate the two, the things that need and want. In Tibetan, we usually use the word in like those two terms in one sort of one word. We have a one term, two words for one term. We can usually say goko, and there are two words, go and ko. Go means to want, and ko means need or necessity, something that you want and something that is necessary for you. To breathe is necessary for us. That is our ko in Tibetan. But go is so many things, so many realms, arrays of objects are there in that wanting realm. I want a big car, I want a big house, I want the poshest car, so many things. So needing, or as you say, choose, right? We have no choice but choose to breathe. Choosing is nothing wrong. But when it comes to wanting, then there is the sliver of grasping here. And then it can grow bigger and bigger into desire, into attachment, into craving, and all sort of things. So, but in the initial stage, in the stage that we are in, the ordinary being, human beings, we would, one might say, in order to, not to survive, but to stay sane, for our sanity, we would need the things that we want. Not everything, but quite a number of things. We need a quite number of fanciful things. Fancy. The term fancy itself means it is not something that we really need, but we would need fanciful things for our want. So, and that happens because we rely so much on the external world, the materialistic world. There's a very good reason here. In Tibetan, okay, in the Dharma cosmology, according to the Buddhism, there are three realms: desire realm, form realm, and the formless realm. So all we are living right now in the what we call we are all living in the desire realm. We are all living in the desire realm. So in the form realm and the formless realm, everybody is meditating. In all the subject or members of all the inhabitants of the formless and form realm are meditating, and they are in deep meditation, different forms of meditation, sky-like meditation, consciousness-like meditation, other forms like that, but they are on deep meditation, all of them. And they are what we call the God realm. They are not God, not in the sense of like athletic body and wielding power and wielding weapons and things like that, but they are all in deep meditation. And so the reason we call them God, in Tibetan we use the word, the term we use for God was Ha, and it can be used very lightly. It is an ambivalent word. It can mean a deity, it can mean divine, it can mean God, gods, goddesses, so many things. So therefore the term we use was Ha, which means divine. So all those who are in the form and formless realm are divine individual. People like us, we are in the desire realm, meaning we depend, we rely, we live on desire. So there's a reason, I mean, a number of, modern sort of scholars and people say, oh, anger is natural, hatred is natural, love is natural, all this is natural, right? The reason is, in a conventional sense, they are natural. Because since we live in the desire realm, we long for things out there. We desire things. We want things. Necessity alone is not sufficient for us. We want more in the forms of wants. Because we are in the desire realm, our grasping is so much more crude than that of the form realm, and for that matter, of the formless realm. Okay, so perfect timing. I will conclude here.
Just real quick about the form and formless realm. Is that corresponding to the God realm and the demigod realm?
Okay, yes, and
sorry, we can talk about this another time.
It does, yes, because okay, so there is the realm in the sense of, okay, so there are two different types of realms here. When we say the three realms, this is one form of realms, and then we talk about the six realms. There's another form of realms. So they can they can superimpose, overlap. Yes, thank you. They can overlap each other. So for example, we belong to the divine realm as human being, but at the same time, we also belong to the human realm. And also the gods from the Lha, the Tibetan term used was Lha. But then there's Lha in the desire realm as well. There's God or divine in the desire realm as well. You like to call it God, divine, deity, whatever goddesses, God with a capital, whatever we want to call it, it's fine. The Tibetan term we use is Lha. So the Lhas from the form and formless realm, they all belong to the God realm in the sense of the sixth realm, the sixth realm, human realm, God realm, demigod realm, animal realm, and the hungry ghost realm. So in that sense, they all belong to not the demigod, but the God realm. And we as human beings, of course, belong to the human realm. But then there are gods or Lha within the desire realm who belong to the God realm, in the sense of the six realms. So actually, yeah, this is one big problem. I think it's quite popular in English. It's translated as the six realms, right? But actually, it is six kinds or categories or race or creed. In Tibetan, we say Jowa Riktu. Jowa means transmigrators, individuals who migrate from one place to another, transmigrators. Six kinds, six creed, six races, six categories of individuals, six categories of transmigrators, six kinds of transmigrators. That is the Tibetan word, kind, actually. Six types of transmigrators. Jowa means transmigrator. Rik means kind or type. So the actual Tibetan word is kind, not realm. But I don't know how it came to be understood as realm. I think probably in the sense of like astral realms, which is already available in English books translation already. English books already have the astral realms and things like that. So I think that is why they translated it as the six realms. But the actual Tibetan word is six kinds or six types of six kinds of transmigrators. Not six realms. But the other one, the Kamsum, that is actually a realm. Desire realm, formless realm, form realm. That is actually the Tibetan word we use is Kam, which means realm.
Yeah, that's much different, the two ideas. Can you have
Yeah.
people that go to the form realm when they meditate?
You go there by so you can go so since this is a realm okay, very interesting. So the form and formless realm, you can go there only through birth. So once you die, once you migrate, so you can only migrate there through birth. So once you die from the desire realm, and then there are certain virtuous actions that you accumulate, and through that power you can transmigrate. You can migrate to that realm. So only by dying you can go there. And the birth in that the form realm is actually that of what we call the sort of like an instant birth. So you were born, but you sort of like apparate, disapparate and apparate. So you just appear there, and then from the first moment you were there, you start meditating until you die. So there are only two thoughts there, we say. The first thought is, oh, I'm born. The last thought is, oh, I'm dying. Between the two, it is in deep, deep, deep meditation. There is no other mundane thoughts at all in both form and formless realms. Oh, I'm born. Oh, I'm dying. That's it.
Sorry to have you go over. That was very interesting. Thank you.
Certainly. We can talk about that in some other sessions. Thank you for your questions, everyone. Okay, so let me conclude by saying the Chanju Semjo, which is may all sentient beings who have not yet generated bodhicitta, cultivated bodhicitta, be able to do so, and those who have already done that, be able to enhance it, be able to extend it. And the same goes for wisdom. Those who have not done so, be able to do so. Those who have already done, be able to expand it.
Chanju Semjo Rinpoche, Mage Panam Kejuruchi, Keba Nyamba Mebayam, Kone Kondo Perwarisho. Mix them up, okay? Me Thank you so much. You all have a good weekend.
Oh, thank you. That was
Thank
very
you.
awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Geshe.
you.
Thank you so much.
Tuk Che Che.
Che.